Hey everybody, Brian Von Vier here. Today we're going to be talking about race issues in D&D, specifically elves. In D&D, why are elves who've lived over 100 years considered equal to humans who've only lived maybe 18 to 20? It has to do with the expected long lives of the elves, barring catastrophic ends. They will live to be thousands of years old. And even then, they will just fade to another existence rather than die of old age, usually. Even if you did die of old age, there is no rush to do anything at all. You have ample resources due to the skilled magical abilities of your people, so you can choose to do whatever you want, for the most part. This is why you will find that elves are generally really good at one or two particular things, but not super great at a wide variety of things. They might be real quick and nimble and amazing at archery, but have no idea at all about farming or water wheels or other things. They spend their time leisurely practicing archery, magic, and dancing. Their food is dropped into their hands by friendly plants, or hunted in the forest, also practicing archery. Why rush to do anything when you have hundreds of years to do it in, if you want? Humans, on the other hand, have at best 100 years to get things done. In reality, particularly in the more dangerous D&D lands, it's more like 40 to 50 on the good end. And you can't start really doing much till you hit 15 or so, though most D&D sets starting age at 18. So you've got 30 to 35 years to do anything you are going to do with your life. And you are going to get things done in that time as a species as a whole, particularly compared to elves. If as a species, you have spurts of 30-ish years to get stuff done, things happen quicker. You need to figure out ways to do things that don't take 50 years of magical training to be considered adequate. So, you invent things to make stuff easier. Or when magic is a thing, you seek out the fast, quick, and potentially dangerous route to power. A new elven mage at level 1, fresh and ready for adventure, has had likely decades of time spent learning and refining their power. A new human mage, on the other hand, has done things and pushed themselves to limits that could prove deadly to reach that same level of power in mere years. An elf wouldn't take the risk. A human can't afford not to. I've actually extrapolated this somewhat to an even shorter-lived race, goblins. Sure, biologically they aren't that far off from human in age ranges, but they are on the shorter side, no pun intended. Adults at 8-ish, old age death around 60. Combined with all of that, usually their lives are much more violent and dangerous, so they might make it to 20 if they were lucky or strong enough, and 40 plus would be an old goblin indeed. Now we have a potential society, if they are able to overcome some base problems that would function on an even tighter timescale than humans. They would likely progress as what seems to be a breakneck pace, particularly for elves. In my family campaign, a tribe of goblins was shown what they call the Way of the Apple, and have embraced a more agrarian, peaceful, and cooperative community. As such, in the short time since they began, they have embraced farming practices, trade with neighbors for needed goods, and advanced themselves significantly. The fast pace will inevitably slow down as they approach equilibrium with their surroundings, but they will likely have innovation and discovery slightly more than their mostly human neighbors. One of the things in the lore that 5th edition didn't put in the elven blurb for the race is that elves reach physical maturity in about 25 to 30 years but aren't considered adults until about 100 years. All because they have a certain kind of dreams about previous lives while they trance as children. After 100 years or so, they stop having these dreams, signaling their real adulthood. This, in part because elves live so long that they can put arbitrary extra specifications on what it means to be an adult. And in part because those dreams will probably continue to mold and change the elf's personality until they're 100 years. However, from the above lore, we can conclude that a level 1 elven PC needs not be 100 plus years. They could just be 30, young and foolish enough to be equals with the humans and such, and throwing themselves into a gauntlet of trials to see if they'll survive it stronger without risking a century of being raised and taught. Not being an adult according to elves doesn't mean they're a child to be kept at home after all. Physically, they're old enough to go on an internship. Now, if we ignore the above lore, which may no longer even apply to 5th edition possibly, there are still plenty of reasons you could use to explain why elves might be equal to humans. The elf might be the actual average for its kind, while human PCs are decisively powerful and well above average for their kind. When humans outnumber the elves 10 to 1, an elf's 1 to 100 talent can be equaled by the human's 1 to 1000. And still meet as many human equals as they had elven peers. We use levels, but in practice there would be an average power to the average soldier. The average human soldier is merely a CR 1/8 conscript, and our knights are CR 2, while the average elven conscript might be CR 1 and their knights CR 5. Elves could be much more powerful. Elves insist on perfection, spending a lot of time on mastering parts of the fighting style for elegance and perfection, while humans just learn it quick and dirty. And in practice, that is enough, as dwarves and halflings with their hundreds of years also aren't more powerful either, and goblins with a mere 6, and orcs with a mere 12 years can catch up. Many people have a peak that they at some point just reach. Not everyone is able of becoming level 20. Some sorcerers find that their innate powers only go as far as level 7, for example. Some artificers don't have the grasp to create more than the most rudimentary magical items, and some fighters don't become the kingdom's champion. While elves can reach this peak more often and work through the diminishing returns, their pinnacle might be equal to humans. Elven culture might be such that elves don't actually get trained a lot. Just because you live hundreds of years doesn't mean you'll work or train hundreds of years. Human education is already scratching its head on how to fill 3 to 6 years of college with things that are kind of related to the subject matter. Try doing that for 100 years without elves just dropping out. That depends on the edition of D&D that you're talking about. You guys like history lessons, right? By the original rules, you wouldn't actually have a human and an elf competing for the exact same job. If you were a human, you had 4 classes to choose from: cleric, fighter, magic user, and thief. If you weren't human, you had 3 classes to choose from: dwarf, elf, and halfling. No, that wasn't a typo. Those were the classes to choose from. Races weren't a thing until AD&D. Elves and humans didn't have the same jobs in the first place, so there was no competition. Once first edition AD&D came around, races were finally a thing. And you could set a human fighter and an elven fighter side by side and compare the two. Most of the time, the human was the better candidate. All races were not created equal, you see. Humans could have a higher strength than any other race, and matched elves for every other score but dexterity. Moreover, all of the races had built-in maximums to their class levels, a limitation that humans didn't have. The rules actually state this disparity directly. Each racial stock has advantages and disadvantages, although in general human is superior to the others for reasons you will discover as you read on. To summarize the reasoning involved, in the earliest editions, the big advantage that humans had over the other races was their limitless potential. Here, the shorter lifespan of a human worked in their favor. They were driven to accomplish in mere decades what an elf could spend a few leisurely centuries working on. To offset this and to demonstrate the advantages of having far more experience than a typical human, elves and dwarves and halflings could learn 2 classes simultaneously, while humans had to learn 1 at a time and couldn't combine the 2 even then. Long story short, if you wanted your character to wear armor and throw a fireball at the same time, it had to be an elf. This, I suppose, made a certain amount of sense. The rules were meant to demonstrate that a man on a mission will always be better than a demi-human who has the option of simply outliving a problem. Conversely, a 300-year-old elf has the time to have 3 lifetimes worth of experience, 1 as a thief, 1 as a magic user, 1 as a fighter. The logic doesn't hold up well to scrutiny, but you can see where the original authors were going. Later editions did away with the racial limitations. They also did away with the stack of advantages that demi-humans had over humans, and concentrated on game balance above all else. By 3.5, the only differences mechanically between a human and an elf were an put-down tug on 2 ability scores, a mild resistance to enchantments, and humans got to decide where their initial skill bonuses went. At this point, elves not being superior to humans is less of a given and more of a choice. Elves, as written in the rulebook, spend their time practicing leisurely arts and enjoying themselves. They took care of the whole struggling to survive thing by the time they reached adulthood. Your average elf, by the time they're old enough to start adventuring, has already spent a lifetime as the equivalent of a human courtier. And now they wander through dungeons and defeat dragons for funsies. Personally, my favorite take on elves is the 5th edition one. The, as of this writing, current elves aren't all that different mechanically from the 3.5 elves, but the 5th edition elves took the idea of every elf being a thrill seeker and ran it with a little. You especially see it when you read Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Elves aren't better than humans at most things because they're too busy. Doing what, you may ask? Why, experiencing one-of-a-kind moments, of course. What else? You see, to an elf in 5th edition, swords tarnish and rust away, civilizations crumble, and anything anyone builds is going to fade to dust, often in the span of a single elven lifetime. What doesn't fade is an elf's memory. Not only can they memorize an event, they can relive it in their trances, what elves do instead of sleeping. Not only that, their memories will carry over into their next lives as well. To an elf, memories are the most precious and permanent of the belongings, and unique experiences are more valuable than gold. Compared to that, a decade or two of doing the same thing over and over again is so boring as to be considered a form of abuse. Conclusion. As I stated in the beginning, the reason for elves not being intrinsically superior to humans depends on the edition of D&D being discussed. The answers range from, because humans are automatically the best at everything, to the current and far more palatable, who wants to spend 2 decades being better than you anyway, buddy? I've got more important things to do. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and of course, leave us a comment down below letting us know what your thoughts on today's topic was. Basically, in my experience, go play Mass Effect 1 and read the first 2 books. You will learn a lot about why humans are considered very immature to many other alien species, or in the case of D&D, other races, because we're not that long living. We will die a lot earlier, so we have to get all of our stuff done really fast, and we have to breed to continue a lot more. Anyway, all the love to everybody. We'll see you next time. Please be safe, happy, and healthy. Bye for now.